We are going to call this meeting to order now. It is 7:02 and October 17, 2022. And this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission. I don't see the Spanish interpreter here, but I can give, yeah, I will wait for the Spanish interpreter to get here. Let me see. Okay. This meeting, the city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Amanda and Andrea. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. Finally, the closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. But please note that this is an automatic captioning services and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to the City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State Law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that no questions will be answered during this meeting, but if answered, both the question and the answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of the screen. Now I'm gonna pass it to the co-chairs to talk about the land acknowledgement.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lavisa Lloyd. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a co-chair of the full PAC for this phase. Hi, everyone. Really nice to see everybody. Although the city has asked for a moratorium on land acknowledgements, the co-chairs have received a request from a PAC member that some form of land acknowledgement continue. We would like to recognize the limits of any land acknowledgement and the harm that can be done by an inadequate or disrespectful land acknowledgement. We are working to find a respectful way to continue to center Indigenous voices, and we'd like to take a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Lavisa. Now we're gonna review the community agreements. And what we'll do is each of us, if we can read it, reflect on it, please, and then we will pass to the next page. Thank you. If I can see your hand, so thumbs up that you are approved of the community agreements. Thank you very much. Now I will pass it over to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
Sure. Hello again. The Commission is currently in the fact-finding phase of work, which will end when all 3 of the outcome documents are approved. It includes hearing from key stakeholders, identifying barriers to accountability in Portland presently, and examining systems of accountability from other jurisdictions. It also includes increased community engagement work. Future phases of work will develop the parameters for the new police accountability system before the Commission presents that to the City Council in 2023 for their consideration and approval. Following today's meeting, there is a full PAC meeting if needed this Thursday, October 20th. We anticipate it will be needed. We have a long document that we're going to start looking at today, hopefully finishing it then. There is also a full commission meeting on Thursday, October 27th, with the authors of the Charter Amendment, Section 210 of the Charter. The commission will also hold a private community building session next Monday, and there will be no meeting on Monday, October 31st. This slide is the current project plan for the fact-finding phase of the PAC's work. It is not their agendas, and it is updated regularly. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the Commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among Commission members as to barriers to accountability in the current system, best practices from Portland and other jurisdictions, and suggestions to consider from experts, as well as taking public comment and meeting with key stakeholders. Today's meeting is the blue box with the purple border at the upper right-hand portion of the screen. This slide shows the outcome documents for the fact-finding phase. The full commission has, in its last 2 meetings, approved the second and third documents. The first document on practices in other jurisdictions was just referred to the full commission last Thursday, October 13th, by the Subcommittee on Research. Today's meeting agenda has one primary purpose: the draft areas of agreement on best practices and practices to avoid from other jurisdictions. This document was referred to the full commission by the Subcommittee on Research 4 days ago. It is not expected that the PAC will make a formal decision today, but if the commission moves very quickly, that is a possibility. So we'll see.
Thank you, Co-Chair Lovisa. Now we're gonna start on reviewing the documents, the draft areas agreement on best practices and practice to avoid from other jurisdictions. Will the subcommittee co-chairs like to describe the draft and frame the discussion? And I will call Co-Chair Sophia.
Oh, Angie, you can do it if you're ready.
I guess so. Thank you. Thank you. The Subcommittee on Research referred the draft areas of agreement on best practices and practices to avoid from other jurisdictions to the full commission at the final subcommittee meeting last Thursday. The purpose of this document is to assess practices in current effect in other jurisdictions. It doesn't cover anything currently happening in Portland or suggestions made by people working in other jurisdictions, as those were in other documents already approved by the full commission. Finally, it doesn't include suggestions from individual commission members, as that will be discussed as soon as the next phase of work starts. This document is designed to have a point of view. Practices that the commission consider best and that they want to avoid are listed here. The document doesn't include proposals the subcommittee had no opinion on, but those that can be brought back up at a later time when we're actually developing recommendations in the future phases.
Thank you, Co-Chair Angie. If Co-chair Sophia or any of the co-chairs for the full commission, if they would like to add a comment about this document or the discussion we're gonna have.
Sure. I just want to thank all our members who participated on the subcommittee, working on such a document. It was a lot of work, and we're hoping that the full commission will be able to recommend this at the end. So I will ask first off for staff, if you could give us a overview of the not the timeline of the document as we have set to talk about how we set it up and how we put together our subheadings and all of that. If you could give us a little bit of background so the full commission can kind of understand how we came across these different subject topics.
Thank you. Yeah, so the subcommittee met 15 times during the last several months. In that time, it referred 2 documents to the full commission, one which was already received by the full commission, subject matter experts and done, and then the other, which was referred out on Thursday. This document was the culmination of work by the subcommittee that included research into other jurisdictions as practices, as well as categorization of those practices. The 7 members of the subcommittee worked to research several different cities and counties and states and identify ultimately 392 different practices that went into a spreadsheet and were eventually converted into the 104 items that are here on the screen. Some other things were added as we went to get to that 104. Each item, we'll talk about that in just a moment, the categorization, but each item has a identified practice, where it was identified, and the details associated with it. In some cases, the same practice was identified in multiple jurisdictions. So you'll see the same kind of common part of the practice, where it was identified, and then specifics to each of the 3 locations. And in some cases, there's 7 or 8 different places. In some cases, there are partial best practices. So these are, and then also counter examples where there are examples that were not done in the way that were done the opposite way. And so instead of separating it out and putting it as a practice to avoid, which is all the way at the bottom of the document, the subcommittee put that within the same entry. And then for those items where there was no associated best practice, but only a practice to avoid, those are all the way down at the bottom, and there's, I believe, 6 of them. So 98 best practices and 6 practices to avoid. They were categorized originally into about 40 different categories, and then those were streamlined by co-chairs down to these letters that you see. So this is how the system in these other jurisdictions deals with policy, how they deal with the jurisdiction and authority of the oversight board, how they make up their oversight board, and so on. And they're lettered. They are lettered A to Z, but because a few categories were combined and we didn't want to confuse the reader by changing the lettering over time, it still goes A through Z, but there are, I believe, 23 or 22 categories, not the full 26. So because a couple letters are skipped in the middle. And as you can see, they'll go, there's big picture sort of authority questions. There's how the oversight board is assembled in terms of a structure. Then there's staff and public nature, budget, and it goes into some of the powers and duties type of content later on. Again, the subcommittee did a lot of work to develop this, and it resulted in the document you have before you. And I think that is all I need to say on it. So I'll pass it back to co-chair Sophia.
Thank you. So just give you a little overview of how we're going to process through this document. We will be going from top to bottom. There were 13 or 14 items rather that were still up for discussion / fact finding. So there's a few issues there. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go from top to bottom. And as we get to those items, we will explain a little bit of the background as to why they have been flagged. And then we will move to the next one for the sake of time. If we have time at the end, if we so happen to get through everything and we get back to those tonight, that would be great. But we're not anticipating that. And we would like to give the full commission a little background on each of those items so that when we do come back on Thursday, everyone will be a little better prepared to discuss those. So we will start.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Co-Chair Sophia, I just need to remind everyone that this is an open discussion and we ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please let me facilitate and be facilitated, and remember that the commission uses a weighted stack in our discussions. And finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Thank you, Co-Chair Sophia.
My apologies, I was going ahead of myself. So I see Commissioner Co-Chair Louisa, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quickly on the discussion when co-chairs were talking about how to work through this document beforehand. We noted there are 104 entries in this document to move through. And so in the interest of time, we thought we would start with the first category, work from top to bottom, and if there are items that require discussion, that we would start with 5 minutes, like allow 5 minutes of discussion. If it's something we can resolve quickly, let's resolve it quickly. If we can't resolve it quickly, let's make a note and table it for later. So just so everybody knows, that's roughly the way that we were thinking about moving through this document today to try to get through as much as we can.
Thank you. I almost forgot that. All right. So what I'll do is I'll start by reading the category. We will allow the commissioners to read the details, and then we will have our facilitator facilitate from there once everyone's finished reading. Okay. So we'll start with A. A is policy. A1, the oversight body is empowered to take input from community members on broad policy, policing policy issues. Please take a moment to read the content.
Thank you. And of course, I have a couple of questions, but I will ask a question, but if also there's somebody that needs more information or explanation about this, let me know. Lovisa, Commissioner Lovisa, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was something that I neglected to say, which was, okay, so there are these like 14-ish items that were flagged by the subcommittee and that were not addressed by the subcommittee, or we didn't have time as a subcommittee to talk about them. Some of those are really small, some of them are a little larger. We'll just go ahead and like do those as we come to them, and like some of them, the intro conversation might be long enough that ends up taking up most of the 5 minutes, and we'll definitely have to table those. But others we might be able to just like talk about quickly, frame quickly, decide on quickly. So we'll just go ahead and go through like everything category wise, like top to bottom, and what we can discuss, and what we don't have a lot of time to discuss, we'll table and talk about later.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Co-Chair Lovisa, and Commissioner Debbie has a question.
I just have a question. I see we're starting with A, policy. Now there's a little preamble just before that I know we talked about at the research subcommittee. Are we going to save resolution of that until after we're done with the whole thing?
So yes. So there's some items that we will be working on, as I said earlier, on Thursday. We will just introduce them for the full commission to review for Thursday. So yes, there are some items that will be just reviewed and then full discussions for them on Thursday. So we will talk about that as we get to them and make sure that the full commission is able to review those for discussion on Thursday.
Thank you, Commissioner and Co-Chair Sophia. Co-Chair Lovisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yes, we'll start with categories, go through, tag or kind of table things that we got to table, and then we'll come back to do intro paragraphs because we felt like it wasn't really fair to ask people to understand the intro paragraphs if they don't know what's in the categories that they're introducing.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we can go back to the document. Oh, the question is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? And we can read it again. Yes.
A1, the oversight body is empowered to take input from community members on broad policing policy issues.
Staff?
Yes, I apologize. There's one other note that needs to be made. I know there's a lot of introductory notes here. The subcommittee, when referring this document, asked if staff could put together a definitions guide that had 2 items in it before the full commission approved it. So that'll be done by Thursday. However, it's important to note one specific thing up front, which is that this document uses the phrase oversight body generically to refer to the community member comprised decision-making entity. Sometimes it's called an oversight board, a community police commission. So there's a lot of different names in different places. So there's a generic term there. And then it also uses the term oversight agency to refer to the staff that ultimately work with, or for, in some cases, the oversight body. So if you see oversight body, that refers to community members meeting to make decisions. If you see oversight agency, that is staff of the city, county, or state working to do the tasks assigned to them. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. And I will pass it to Commissioner Dan.
Oh, thank you. I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a commission member. The other documents that we considered, I think, used terms like best practices or practices to consider, and I thought that we had come to agreement that's what how we're gonna present these, since there are many, as was mentioned in the introduction, where there are multiple examples, so they can't all be the best practice. So I just want to make sure that the rest of the commission understands that not every single one of these items is a best practice, because some of them are kind of a smorgasbord to choose from when we get to the later phases where we're designing the board. And we can always make up our own too. But the ones that we're presenting from these other communities are, they could be best practices, they could just be practices to consider. That's my understanding of what we agreed on. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. And my question will be as the following. Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice or practice to consider? A best practice, yes, okay. And in order to vote, I will ask everyone to raise their hands and we can count the votes. If you want to abstain, we're using this to abstain. If you need more information, you will need to ask questions or flag it as a discussion. You need a discussion. Okay. Again, can you show me who wants to take this practice as a best practice or practice to consider? Okay. I see the majority, and thank you. Commissioner May? Oh, you are raising your hand to approve it. Okay, thank you. This is approved. If you are raising your hand because you have a question, please just mute yourself and ask the question. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next one.
A2, the oversight body can assess implications of alleged misconduct cases they review, including policy, procedure, training, and take action after this assessment. So please take a moment to read.
Is there's any questions or any? No? Okay. Then I will ask the question. I have to ask the question that they told me to ask. And is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? They want me to ask this question. Okay, can I see your hands? Okay. Thank you. We can go to the next one.
A3, the oversight body has authority to take recommendations regarding policy and training with the potential to improve police department operations. Please take a moment to review.
Okay. Do we have any questions, comments? No? Okay, is this a practice? Oh, yes, staff?
So just to clarify, this is there is a proposed change here. So prior to the decision, there's a proposed change, and it's to update the list of places that it's identified in, and to replace that Denver, Seattle, Oakland with Maryland, because the text that was affiliated with this ended up in A4, and Maryland was later added here, but not here.
Okay,
Danny can speak to that first more, of course.
Okay, then my question will change. It will say, is there general agreement to change it from as it is to a proposed change? Okay. Thank you. We can go, thank you, staff, and then we can go to the next one.
Okay. A4, the oversight body sets policy for police department. Please take a moment to review. Substance.
Okay. Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Okay. Thank you.
Victoria, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that we might have skipped having a consensus vote about A3.
Okay. Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you, Co-Chair Lovisa. And I will, can you read it again, please, Co-Chair? And then I will ask the question.
Sure. A3, the oversight body has authority to make recommendations regarding policy and training with the potential to improve police department operations.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
A5, the oversight body has a staff unit focused on policy. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Okay. Thank you.
A6, the oversight body conducts a public review of police department's budget. Please take a moment to review the document.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Okay, thank you.
Section B, oversight body jurisdiction and authority. For B1, the oversight agency fulfills an investigatory and disciplinary function, an auditing and monitoring function, and a review function to ensure both individual and systemic police oversight, including overall agency practices and policies. I'll read that one more time. The oversight agency fulfills an investigatory and disciplinary function, an auditing and monitoring function, and a review function to ensure both individual and systemic police oversight, including overall agency practices and policies. Please take a moment to review it.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
B2, the oversight body has authority to receive all complaints, even about items it may not have investigative authority over. Please take a moment to review the document. Thank you.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
B3, the oversight body has defined authority over, at minimum, alleged misconduct directly affecting the public.
We will scroll the page, that way you can get all the information.
Thank you.
Here we have a proposed change. Commissioner Debbie.
So I worked on Denver and I don't think that I meant for that to be a practice to avoid. Maybe we should read it again and see if there's any reason why we think it should be avoided.
So thank you so much. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. Is that it? Commissioner Debbie?
Yeah, this one is blue, right? I mean, I know I sent some things to Samir, and we haven't had a chance to, by the time I think, he got him and then got a chance to work on him. We haven't had a chance to have a follow-up conversation, but I don't know if other people look at that, do they think that's a practice to avoid? I kind of think it seems okay.
So Debbie, let's get through the first part and then we'll come back to this, okay?
And I'm totally fine with just sort of keeping a little sign on that and coming back later and thinking about it harder. I just want to make sure we don't agree to leave it in the wrong place. That's all.
No, we won't. We're just trying to get through the stuff that's easiest first and then come back to it. Thank you. Staff has a
Yeah, staff, please.
Yeah, I think that's just a mistake on our end as to interpretation of at the bottom of the list and which list there. So happy to put it up here. Still in track changes until the full commission can make a determination either way. I just wanted to link, there are 3 things that are kind of one change here, if I understood correctly. And Commissioner Debbie can speak to this more, but moving Denver here and therefore adding it up to the top here in the identified in list, which would relate. And then that is also related to the next item, which would be removed entirely because this content was essentially before was essentially reworded into this additional text. So just to clarify, you'll see it in 3 places in the document, but it's essentially one proposed change. And I see Commissioner Debbie nodding, so yeah.
Okay, if I understand correctly, do I ask the question about opposition to changing first? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, let's leave this for discussion so everybody have time to go back and look back.
Okay.
So let's just leave this table this one for discussion. When everyone can kind of look at the whole document and see where everything is switching back and forth to. So let's just hold off on this specific portion at this time.
Correct. And Co-Chair Sophia, because this affects the next before, we also will not revise before until after. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
B5. Board has authority to send cases to the district attorney, grand jury, or other authority for criminal investigation. Please take a moment to read the content.
Okay, because this was flagged as further discussion.
Yes.
Okay,
So if I could ask staff if they could give a little background for that, so that the full commission can understand a little bit about why it was flagged.
Yeah, so this one was flagged because, I mean, a lot of things were flagged. This is one of the ones that the subcommittee did not have time to finish up, and it was kind of put later because it had to do with a determination of what goes in and into the document, and that's a relatively big picture discussion. There are two examples of this where in the document where we haven't gotten to the other one yet, but where there's a question over, does it help the purpose of the document? Does it advance the commission's intent with this document having a point of view, identifying best practices, et cetera, to state that San Diego staff believes this power has never been used in San Diego? So that's the essential question, is does this support the purpose of the document or not? And that's why it was flagged.
Thank you so much. So we can move to the next item. C, makeup of oversight board. C1, the oversight body is large enough to be representative of the city's population. So we also have some flag for discussions here. I'm going to ask staff one more time if they can give us a little bit of background, please.
Sure. So the purpose of the inclusion of this entry, which does require scrolling, so I'll scroll down just a little bit here. Actually, all fits. Is to say that the identified practice, which is good, is having a large enough board. And the question was, there were a lot of different examples of various numbers. The subcommittee did say, 23 was sufficient in San Diego, and New York was large enough. But the question was, does this fit into that, or should it be removed, or considered a counterexample even if 23 and 15 are big enough, but 9 is not, hypothetically. And it's up to the commission how big is big enough.
Thank you so much. So let's move to the next one, please. C2, board members' makeup should reflect the demographic and geographic diversity of the community. Please take a moment to review.
and Co-Chair Sophia, there was a question.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Obi at the in the chat, and of course this is gonna be for further discussion, but Commissioner Obi, is that okay with you? We pass to the next one?
Yes, it's absolutely okay. We can pass to the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask Commissioner Obi to just state his comment, please?
Sure. I guess Obi Igwoju, I'm one of the commissioners. Just looking at each city, I mean, they vary substantially in size, like with Washington, D.C. versus New York, in like the high hundreds of thousands to multiple million. So when I ask about like per capita, like does New York actually have a small amount, or is that representative versus DC trying to move to a specific number? Again, that should not be reflective, or do you just need a certain amount of people, regardless of referred cases to any sort of accountability commission?
Thank you so much. That's a good idea. So can we flag that one for further comment, please? Further discussion, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Obi, and thank you, Co-Chair Sophia.
Sorry about that. So I'm going to read it one more time. C2, the board member makeup should reflect the demographic, geographic and geographic diversity of the community. Take a moment to review. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I will ask the question. Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you. We can go to the next one. Oh, Commissioner May? Oh, yeah, no, sorry. She was agreeing. Thank you.
Okay, C3. Selection criteria for membership includes subject matter expertise. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider?
Thank you. C4, designated alternatives for oversight body. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
All right. Let's go down just a little bit so I can see the heading. Section D, selection of oversight board. D1, the oversight body members are appointed by City Council. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
Okay, moving to D2. D2, members of the oversight body have to agree to certain terms upon appointment and reappointment. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
D3, community members apply for oversight body membership, and applications are screened before passing them on to the appointing authority. So we have some comments here or something to review. So I'll ask staff one more time to give us a little background, please.
Yeah, this, thank you, Co-Chair Sophia. This item was placed into the document in one of the last rounds of updates to the subcommittee version. It had been identified, but just kind of not incorporated anywhere, or it had been removed potentially. And it was identified as a partial best practice, but Commissioner Debbie suggested redesignating it potentially as a best practice. And she can probably speak to that better than staff can.
Thank you. We will flag this one and move to D4, please. D4, the oversight board members are given sufficient training to exercise their duties on behalf of the public. So we also have some suggestions. I will ask staff again, instead of me reading out the staff to explain a little background. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll start with the lower one. there's a Los Angeles County example here, which was incorporated in examples that are good, that was flagged as potentially moving to the bottom as a counterexample, as you can see in the comment there from Commissioner Dan on the right. And then from the top, there's two places. This is the first of two where the word sufficient is in the text of the identified best practice and has been flagged for potential removal. In order to, well, you can see in the recommendation or in the comment on the side. And I think, again, Commissioner Dan in this case might be able to speak more to it when we get to that discussion better than staff can.
Thank you so much. So let's move to D5, please. I'm sorry, this is one of the ones where we skipped. The topics could we combine others? So we're at E. Terms of removal and oversight board members. E1, members serve staggered multi-year terms. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you. We can go to the next.
E2, members apply for renewal up to a total maximum length of service. Renewal applications are evaluated and considered by the appointing authority. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
E3, the oversight body has defined criteria for automatic member removal. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to E4, the oversight body has defined authority and criteria for discretionary removal or referral to the appointing authority for removal. I'm going to read that one more time. The oversight body has defined authority and criteria for this discretionary removal or referral to the appointing authority for removal. Just a lot of removals in there, sorry.
Thank you. And Co-Chair Faith has raised her hand. Co-Chair, do you have a comment, question?
Yeah, I just had a question from the subcommittee on E3. I'm sorry, I know we moved past that. I'm just curious around administrative policy. It says criminally convicted and unable to serve. Does that mean, I guess, what is a criminal I'm curious about that, of like, what does criminally convicted mean? And no longer being a resident, is it a requirement in San Diego that you are a resident of, like, I guess I'm curious about just some of the language details here of it could exclude folks if this is a best practice for us to consider. It seems a little, this language seems a little exclusive to me, and I'm curious if it means something else to the research subcommittee that I may not understand.
Thank you so much, Faith. I would like us to flag that for further discussion. And move to the next.
Commissioner,
Uh-oh.
Commissioner Sophia, Commissioner Dan say he can very fast answer this.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Dan.
Oh, great, thank you. My understanding is it means that if you are criminally convicted and then in jail, you can't serve out your term because you can't do it from jail. And the no longer being a resident, yes, it was a requirement for them to be a resident of San Diego County to be on that board. That doesn't mean that's what we're going to recommend. But if that's one of the requirements, then that should be automatic grounds for removal. But again, it's just we don't have to adopt these. We're just saying these are what other jurisdictions use. We're not agreeing to adopt these right now. We're just saying we're moving this on to the other phases to look at.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Faith, that answer your question, or you want us to flag this for further discussion?
No, it answers my question. I think I have pause just about the way that, like, I wouldn't consider some of the way that this is worded as a best practice, but if it's just something for us to consider, then not enough to hold it up.
Okay, then staff, you can remove it, and this was approved for the majority of the commissioners. Thank you. And we can review. Thank you, Co-Chair Faith, for your question. We can go to E4 again and just to review it.
E4, the oversight body has defined authority to create for discretionary removal or referral to the appointing authority for removal.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice to consider? Okay, thank you. We can go to the next one.
Thank you. I just wanted to take one pause to just, the state that these are not a practice to consider. These are other jurisdictions have found these as best practices.
Best practice, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make clear that
Yes.
other jurisdictions have found these as best practices. So I'll keep going to E5. Members whose terms have expired continue to serve until the replacement is appointed. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next one.
So this is F on staff. And this one also has some items here, paragraph flag, but I will still read the header. F1, actually the header has a lot of things in there too. The oversight body, and I'm just gonna, I'm trying to make sure I say it the right way. The oversight body, this is the original, the oversight body hires, manages, and conducts reviews, and can also choose to fire executive directors of the oversight agency. So there's been some proposed changes to this title as well, or this subheading, as well as some of the text as well. So I'll ask staff if we can provide a little insight on this.
Sure. So I'm going to scroll down first because there's some partial best practices here. And there's sort of two changes proposed. The first one, well, the one that you're seeing on screen in blue is a proposed change to better reflect the research done. And Commissioner Debbie can speak to that more when we have time. I would actually offer as a suggestion that this one could probably be figured out relatively quickly. The second one is in red up at the top here in the header. and it refers to changing the header to better describe what research is listed at the top and what it actually says, because there are jurisdictions that have the hiring and firing authority and jurisdictions that don't. And there are essentially two ways that the subcommittee dealt with that in different items. One is to change where the jurisdictions are listed. You can move a jurisdiction down to partial best practice if it doesn't have the authority that you want to say is a best practice up in the header, or you can change the best practice to say what the things that are up in this top category of unnumbered points says. So this is one way to address that, and I think Commissioner Gann can speak to that more when we have time. I do think that the blue item, Co-Chair Sophia, might be worth figuring out quickly as we go.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do that then.
Okay, so since I did Oakland and Denver, the sentence I'm proposing on the Oakland is to get rid of the thing about the system is in the process of being implemented for the first time, when in reality, the police commission's already done 2 hirings and 1 firing of their agency director. So, you know, that's not a new thing for them. They've also fired the police chief. So they've got lots of practice with managing their personnel. And then, did you want to work on address Denver right now? I mean, this is the accurate description of how they do things. And then you can get rid of that last sentence, because I feel like the part above it is more descriptive.
So I'm just going to make sure we have 2 items basically. One in first is outlining that the system is in the process of implementing for the first time, which is not true anymore because they've already done that. So that's a fact check. And then in Denver, with the assistance of the selection committee, the oversight board screens and selects 3 agency director candidates. Community process led by the oversight board concludes with the selection of a nominee who is confirmed by city council. So there's a proposal to strike this sentence, the following sentence. In Denver, the agency director is hired and served as the pleasure of the oversight board. So we're proposing to remove that. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Co-Chair Sophia, and then Commissioner Debbie.
So I was just trying to be clear that the proposal to remove that last sentence
Yes.
is because it is just a summary of the information priors. So I'm just wanted to confirm.
Yeah, right. I feel like the one sentence just kind of doesn't really capture the whole story, where the part that has the underline is you know, a better description of how it really works. The one thing I would add though is their oversight board does have the authority to fire the monitor, whatever the guy's called, the agency director. So I might to replace that crossed out sentence, I might just say that the oversight board has the authority to fire the agency director. And then I feel that really captures the whole story and fits with the heading above, the bold heading. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, I want to ask the question. Is there, just for this point first, is there a strong opposition to changing from as it is to a proposed change? Okay. And then the second question for this part, is there general agreement to changing from as it is to a proposed change? Okay, thank you. We have agreement. Then after we can but we need to get back and see if it's approved.
And we also need to do this heading, make sure that.
Oh, yes. Is for the heading to, should we leave it for further discussion or should we?
We have support staff.
Yeah, staff. Mhm.
Not going to comment on that. I'll defer to co-chairs on that question, but if you want to resolve that, then we would need to do the overall approval of F1, but if you leave it till later, we haven't been. So they're kind of a package deal. Do you do the change to the header and then the full approval, or just move on to F2 right now? And whichever you prefer.
So, yeah, thank you. Let's just consider the changes in the header, if we could.
Okay. Yes, of course. And this question is just for the header. Is there a strong opposition to changing from as it is to a proposed change? And I see Commissioner Debbie has raised her hand.
I just have a question. I'm not quite sure about what all this means. So is the word hires going to be in there or is it crossed out?
It's crossed out.
That's what I thought. Well, so seems to me, at least the Oakland and the Denver examples, I have to read the San Diego. No, same with San Diego. All of those agencies, all those groups hire their director. So should the word hire be in there?
So I'm going to table this.
You can, that's fine, yeah.
We're gonna move on. I thought it was gonna be quicker than it is, so we'll get back to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to F2, please. F2, the oversight body hires managers and can choose to fire the top monitor or inspector general. Please take a moment to review the one statement there.
Is there a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay, thank you.
Okay. F3, the oversight body is directly involved in hiring and, if necessary, firing the police chief. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay, thank you. Next.
F4, the oversight body has the authority to hire independent legal counsel. Please take a moment to review.
And we're gonna need to scroll the page. Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. Next, please.
F5, the oversight agency has sufficient staff to support agency operations. This one has 2 comments. We further discussed the word sufficient in one of the other items. And there's also another item to be flagged for discussion. Staff would like to provide a little background. I appreciate it.
Sure, Co-Chair Sophia. So this one has 2 things that were previously mentioned as in another item, first of 2, and in both cases, the second of 2 is in this item. So the bottom one is 6 enough? Is 8 enough or sufficient in this case? And then also, is sufficient the optimal word for the same reasons were expressed as to why that might be removed as above, and the same concern was expressed of are these numbers, especially as you compare to some of the other numbers of staff are 6 or 8 enough. And then while I have 4, I'll just also scroll down and say there is a counter example here as well that needed scrolling to.
Thank you so much. Can we move to the next item, please? F6, the oversight body staff are provided adequate training for their roles. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay, thank you.
F7, the oversight system may reach outside city structures to complete its work. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay, there is A14. This is the last one? It was the last one, right? Yes. This is A14. We're gonna have 5 minutes, 6 minutes break. We're gonna come back at 8:20. Thank you. Cindy. Reviewing the document. Thank you. And just a clarification, we are through the document, we're going fast, and then when we come back to the discussion, we will have the 5-minute discussion. But as now, we're just going fast on things that don't require any discussion. And then we will come, we can either come back or continue with the document. Thank you. Okay. E3 has comment for the discussion.
So just to, sorry,
Okay,
Commissioner. Just to clarify, Co-Chair CMOB had put into the chat asking if we could add back the flag that had originally been created by Co-Chair Faith on this item. So it's added back in on E3, and we'll go back to down to G. I just wasn't able to scroll up and show that for the public record. So just getting that on the board there. And then if I can say one thing really quickly about this process, there has been a lot of work done by the subcommittee members on this document, and you're of course welcome to continue talking on this document as much as possible, but there are also several members who were not on the subcommittee and maybe less familiar with the document. It's totally okay to jump in, ask a question if you're not as familiar with it. You know, this document is ultimately a full commission document. It's not a subcommittee document. So if it's at all possible, or if there's anything that you would need in terms of information to help you both participate now and on Thursday, or just understand the document better, please do feel free to speak up and to ask questions, because again, this is a full commission document. So while subcommittee members are of course welcome to continue talking, of course, but also those who weren't involved in that.
Thank you so much. I just want to reiterate what you said. We do want participation from the full commission, and the 5 minutes for the items that are already flagged, those are the ones we'll come back to. But if there any other commissioner would like to have discussions such as Commissioner Obi and Commissioner Co-Chair Faye, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. Okay, thank you. So I will continue with G. Subheading G, public nature of meetings and hearings. G1, the oversight body holds meetings which are open and accessible to the public. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. Next one, please.
G2, oversight agency holds open evidentiary hearings on misconduct, complaints, and public investigative reports. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay, thank you.
G3, the oversight body has a set list of agenda items which are by default for meetings. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you.
Okay, G4, the oversight body meets regularly with the agency director, chief of police, and manager for public safety. So I would like to have the group just consider the one change, and that is the addition of and a manager of public safety. So I'll give you a moment to review the full document before we discuss it. Thank you.
And also, thank you, Co-Chair Sophia. Also, Commissioner Sima, he is requesting to have a comment from him in G2. And the comment is about how this will work with notified officers. And we will put the comment. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Dunn?
Thank you, Ms. Lara. My comment for this was to replace the words manager of public safety with the words and other officials, which, because existing language is very specific, and we've only had a manager of public safety who's supposed to be a tentative temporary position. I don't know what's going to happen with that here in Portland for a short time. So I think a more generic term would be more appropriate here. That's why I suggested that.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. And Co-Chair Sophia, would you like me to ask the question about the changing for a proposed change?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Thank you. Is there a strong opposition to changing from as it is to a proposed change? No. Is there general agreement to changing from as it is to a proposed change? Thank you. Then we go to the next one. Thank you, Commissioner Dan, for your notes. Thank you.
We still have to vote on that one though.
You're right. Thank you. We need to go back and, okay, yes. Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. And thank you for reminding me, Co-Chair Sophia. Next.
No problem. G5, the oversight body holds open meetings regularly and frequently. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next one.
G6, hearings on individual cases are generally open to the public with limited specific exceptions defined in the law. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Monica and then Commissioner Sima.
I just wanted to add a little quick change. Should we add Seattle next to Maryland and identify it in, since we're talking about Maryland right there? That's all.
That's a very good, thank you for noticing that. And I guess Commissioner Sima was
Same page.
perfect, thank you. Since we added, I need to ask the question first. Is there a strong opposition to changing from as it is to a proposed change? Is there general agreement to changing from as it is to a proposed change? Thank you. And then I will ask, is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have H. Subheading H is on budget. H1, the oversight body has publicly disclosed budget. This item has quite a few comments on there and things to rectify. So I will ask staff just to give us a brief overview before we move to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sophia. I actually think this is one proposed change, and Commissioner Dan can speak to it better than staff can when there is time to do so, but looks like it's a proposal to remove this line and replace it with this line up above. And I guess we'll explain when we get to it.
Yes, thank you so much. Let's move to H2. H2, the location of the office is independent and accessible to the community. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next.
We're on subheading I, audit functions. I1, the oversight agency reviews all misconduct investigations to ensure they are complete before finding and discipline are determined. Please take a moment to review. Thank you all. Victoria, I think it's just one. I think you're looking at I.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I asked the question and nobody answered. Okay, sorry. It's because I wasn't mute. Is this a practice the PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Now, yeah, I can see. Thank you.
Okay. I2, the oversight agency audits closed cases alleging misconduct and may recommend policy changes. I'll read that again. The oversight agency audits closed cases alleging misconduct and may recommend policy changes. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next one.
I3, the oversight body may conduct a sentinel event reviews and or reviews of undesirable police related activities. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you.
Okie doke. We're heading to subheading J, which is reporting. J1, the oversight body and agency are required to regularly and frequently issue public records. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next one.
J2, annual reports of the oversight body and oversight agency have required contents which are defined by law. By listing specific reporting requirements in the code for agency and the commission reports, it ensures the same type of information will be available to the public and others over time. This facilitates year-to-year comparisons and reliable access to information. Please take a moment to review.
And this will need to scroll the page for you to review all the points. Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next one.
J2. Is it J3? Sorry. J3, reporting on closed cases includes all information except complaints and officer names in specified situations. Please take a moment to review.
And we will scroll the page. That way you can finish reviewing and reading. Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice?
And apologies, there is a little bit more here I missed.
Okay, yes, I can read it. I can ask the question again. And Commissioner Faith, as Commissioner Faith, co-chair Faith.
Yeah, a question for the subcommittee. So reporting on closed cases includes all information except complainant and officer names in specific situations. And we're agreeing that this is a best practice. I don't know that I agree excluding officer names is a best practice. So the way that this is worded is not something that I can agree to. And I feel pretty strongly about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. We will put it as a for the discussion.
In that case, we can move to J4.
Mhm.
J4, the oversight body maintains an online tracker of commission policy recommendations, including their responses and implementation. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next one.
Thank you. J5, outline reporting includes complaints, findings, outcomes, and discipline, as well as aggregated data. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you.
J6, the oversight body can propose the release of otherwise confidential information. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice?
Subheading K, appeal processes. K1, police officers can appeal findings or dismissal of a case. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next one.
K2. The complainant may appeal findings and or dismissal or discussions not to, decisions not to investigate. I'll read it one more time. K2, the complainant may appeal findings and or dismissal or decisions not to investigate. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice?
K3, the oversight body has independent authority to reopen cases. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice?
K4, appeals are heard by the oversight body. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay, thank you. You can put your hands down.
Okay, let's move to the next one, please. Oops, support staff. Okay.
Yeah, just noticing in the last request for consensus that there were a lot of folks who noted that they were standing aside, and it may be worth revisiting this item. A higher proportion than usual, just to ask if anyone who has a proposed change could maybe suggest that over the next 3 days to revisit, because I believe our co-chairs have defined consensus as including a little bit more general agreement than what was cited there. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, K5. The preponderance of evidence standard is used on appeal. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice? Okay. Thank you. You can lower your hands.
Thank you. So I would like to make a clarification. Dan's put in a message. So when our facilitator is asking if it's a best practice, she's actually, we'll just keep adding, it is a best practice to consider. So having that in at the end, we've been kind of trying to, we've been overlooking that in some cases. So that is what it means. So all those ones and prior to what wasn't said, we will continue to say it, but that's what we meant. So thank you for putting that comment in there. So we'll be sure to say that next time. Let's move along. L, subheading L, City Council involvement. L1, the City Council can send the case back to the oversight body for reconsideration. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to adopt as a best practice?
To consider.
To consider, okay, to consider. Thank you.
All right. It's a long night, so bear with us, please. M, subheading M, board compensation. M1, community members serving on the oversight board are compensated for their time and work. Please take a moment to review. I think there's a little bit more to scroll, so just be patient.
Thank you. Do we need to scroll the page? Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. Is this a practice that PAC would like to consider as a best practice? Thank you.
M2, community members serving on the oversight board are reimbursed for any expenses they incur as part of their public service. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to consider as a best practice? Thank you.
Okay. Subheading N, internal structure. In one, the oversight body is able to set both its bylaws and its other internal processes within board parameters established by law. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to consider as a best practice? Thank you.
All right, N2, quorum. The oversight body may meet and make decisions when a majority of seated members are present, subject to a minimum threshold defined by law. Please take a moment to review.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to consider as a best practice? Thank you.
Okay, N3, the oversight body may establish and define its own officer positions from among its voting members. Please take a moment to review.
And N3 has more information. It requires to scroll the page. Is this a practice that PAC would like to consider as a best practice? Thank you. We can go to the next.
N4, the oversight body may establish and define its own commissioners, or its own committees or subcommittees, which address different aspects of the oversight body's work. Please take a moment to review.
Okay, there is, I need to ask first for the addition on this test and say, is there a strong opposition to changing from as it is to a proposed change? adding Oakland and Seattle. Is there a general agreement to changing from as it is to a proposed change? Thank you. And now, is this a practice the PAC would like? I know they asked me to ask the question differently. I'm sorry, but the PAC would like to consider as a best practice to consider. That's what they asked me. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, in 5, oversight body members are encouraged to vote with recusals in limited circumstances and or abstentions discouraged. Sorry. One more time. Oversight body members are encouraged to vote with recusal in limited circumstances and abstentions discouraged. Please take a moment to read.
Is this a practice that PAC would like to consider as a best practice to consider? Okay. Thank you. I also was wondering for the questions that some commissioners abstain. Maybe if I ask the question this way, do you think it will be approved? Or do you want to leave it? Because, thank you, this was approved, but for the one that some of the members abstain, maybe I can ask the question again, and then we can see if we needed to leave it for discussion.
So I'll ask staff, which item was that you made the comment on?
Oh, apologies.
No, I'm sorry, just because since now I asking the question, maybe that will prevent a discussion and we can. But if it's.
I think it was K4, but we can go back and check afterwards on the notes and verify it and email that out to the membership and ask them for a
Okay,
proposed change for the next meeting on Thursday.
okay.
Okay,
That's-
that's great. I when I saw the comment in the chat, I was thinking similar, but I knew what you meant, so I didn't really say much, but thanks for putting that out, because obviously everyone wasn't thinking the same way as I was. So let's end there. We'll start next time with P, and then we'll do the same thing and go back to comments at the end. So I'll let facilitators take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sophia. You did a very good job reading everything. It gets exhausted sometimes. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to a general public comment. And I wanna ask the public that this is time to make any public comment. Please, we will take now public comment on the issues the PAC is discussing. Our community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. We ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 2 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if you like to speak. Okay, I don't see anybody raise their hand. Now we are going to garden plot recap. Is there anything? I don't have anything, but if anything that co-chairs have for the garden plot recap. No. Thank you. Then we can adjourn the meeting.
Just a moment.
Sure.
Laura. So just to, I don't know if this is exactly a garden plot, but just to clarify what and this will be emailed out to members as well later tonight. There were 8 items which have been tabled from A through the end of N, as in Nancy. And they are the pre-A1 comment, the B3, B4 change, which is collectively one proposed change encapsulating both of those entries. There's an outstanding item on B5, C1, D3, D4, F1, and H1. And then anything else that may come up next meeting on Thursday. And again, if these or anything else, if members you get a copy that you would like to propose changes to, please feel free to submit them back in so that they can be shown on the screen at the next meeting.
Thank you, staff. Anything else? Oh, there is a question if the meeting on Tuesday starts at 6:30.
Yes, the meeting starts at 6:30. And it is scheduled to go until 9 p.m., but it may run long. And in order to finish this phase of work, it may need to run longer. So please clear your schedules as best you can.
Thank you, staff, and thank you, Commissioner Dan, for the question. Commissioner and Co-Chair Lovisa.
Sure. Thanks everybody for your time and your patience and everything, your stamina on this time and next time. I just wanted to say there were a few where I abstained and I have no proposed changes. I was just voting in response to the question, like the literal interpretation of the question. And I would be in consensus with all of these as like best practices to consider. So just wanted that to be on the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovisa. Okay. We then say thank you for all of the members who attend today's meeting and for your contributions. Thank you also for the interpreters supporting access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and its subcommittees for all Portlanders. Thank you. Finally, thank you for all the members of the community for attending and contributing with questions. Please submit advanced public comment prior to future meetings. If you are not already signed for an email updates, please also sign to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting of the full commission is expected to be the final meeting of the fact-finding phase is scheduled for this Thursday, October 20 at 6:30 p.m. It's now 9:07 and this meeting is adjourned.